Good evening, class. My name is Logan Thompson, and I'll be presenting my learning contract project. For my project, I decided to focus on budgeting for volunteer fire departments, looking at some of the challenges, best practices, and recommendations in order for departments to be successful in their budgeting. So some of the challenges that I highlighted or that I found for volunteer fire departments is limited funding sources, increased costs for fire apparatus and other equipment necessary, the lack of dedicated financial expertise within departments in order to conduct budgeting to meet regulatory standards. Um, and then compliance and reporting requirements that are burdensome for these small departments that don't necessarily have that expertise. I mean, the challenges of fundraisers and grants and seeking donations and things like that, those can be inconsistent forms of funding. And as costs go up for things, if you're not getting more donations, then your budget's going to be completely out of balance, and that can cause huge issues going forward in providing the emergency services that your community needs. So some of the best practices that I looked at through my research were diversifying your funding sources. So utilizing those same fundraisers and donors and grants, and maybe some form of tax base if that's possible in the community, and just in making sure you're not solely focused on a single revenue source, because if you don't get a grant one year, but you can make up it for fundraisers. So having that plan in mind, and that goes to having a budget in general, and having a financial plan and forecasting it, to know what your needs are going to be and how are you going to meet them. And if something falls through, what's your contingency? So having all of that built into your budget process. One of the other important factors that departments should have is just transparency and accountability within their process. So step one is to actually have a budget. Many departments, especially small departments, they really just keep the books. They don't plan and forecast their spending or track their revenue to the level of detail that they should be. And they really need that financial transparency when it comes to applying for grants, because some of the record keeping involved in order to even apply or maintain a grant is pretty burdensome. Another big recommendation and best practice is to offer training for volunteers in the budgeting process. So it's we've all just done 6 weeks of a class, and I personally don't consider myself an expert on public budget and finance. So somebody that just volunteers because they want to be a firefighter, they might not have that expertise either. So having that training as part of your department is essential to success in the future. And then collaborating with local governments and even finding some pro bono financial consultants. So other organizations that already work budgets or experts in the budgeting realm that could help a volunteer fire department is an avenue that they should pursue. So I identified the problems and then looked at the best practices and made some of those recommendations throughout my paper. I did two case studies, one from a small department in Pennsylvania and one from here in Texas. And, I found that neither one of them do all of the things right. But they each have components of, one was very diversified in their revenue streams, which has helped them be successful for decades. And the other implemented bylaws to ensure transparency and, kind of protect themselves from corruption that can happen within the financial process, as that's something that's seen in small volunteer departments around the country, is that people get in trouble for skimming off the top, and the small department in Texas has done a great job of setting themselves up to avoid that altogether. So overall, the project, looking at statistics, there's 62% of volunteer or fire departments in the country are all volunteer. So the need for better budgeting practices in those departments is essential, and I really hope that this white paper is something that I can share with departments, and I hope to build some classes off of it and hopefully present to the State Firefighter Fire Marshal Association conference next year. Thank you. Bye.